Hello and welcome everyone, Tiberius here, and today I am kicking off a new interview series about getting into cybersecurity, talking with folks who have knowledge about the hiring process or have themselves just started their cybersecurity careers. Joining me today is Trash Puppy, a former ER nurse transitioning into cybersecurity. She's been teaching herself how to code and hack over the last year and a half and will be starting as a penetration testing intern in May. She streams her coding and cybersecurity journey multiple times a week, with hugely popular streams which frequently last well over 6 hours. Trash Puppy, welcome and thank you for sharing your knowledge and experiences.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me.
We recently met at HackSpaceCon.
Yeah.
That was literally the first time we met in real life. This is completely not even on my questions list, but how was your first security conference? Because HackSpaceCon was your first security conference.
Yeah, it was freaking awesome. I didn't expect everyone to be so nice, and it was cool to meet a bunch of people that you know about and interact with online. And just to find out that they're really awesome, chill people in person is just, I don't know, it makes it so much more welcoming to be in cybersecurity, I guess. So it was awesome for sure.
Excellent. All right, let's kick off the interview. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So, firstly, I think a lot of people watching will be wondering why the name Trash Puppy.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So it's a little bit of a long story, but the very shortest version of it is that my dog Loki, who's an Akita Husky, we rescued him a couple of years ago in California. And before we got to him, he had been in a shelter. And before that, he was a street dog for like a year. His first year of life, he was abandoned. Loki's like my favorite dog. He's the love of my life for real. And we called him, one of his nicknames was Trash Puppy because he was a little street puppy for so long. So that's kind of where the name came from. I ended up adopting it when I started learning how to code. And that was because I was an ER nurse. I had just been punched by a patient, had a huge concussion, like almost TBI. And I was learning to code around the same time. And I just sort of created this little persona for learning how to code. And I sort of just enveloped myself in that for a little bit and made all of my social media Trash Puppy. And I think looking back on it, it was a way to sort of like protect myself from what had just happened. I kind of just made my own little world and my own little identity, which was safe and had nothing to do with being a nurse or any of the crap I had just gone through. And since then, it's just, turned into this whole thing.
That is honestly a really good story about how you got your name. It's much better than mine, which is I just like the name Tiberius. So
That's
yeah.
it.
Yeah, pretty much. Everyone asks me, was it a Star Trek thing? Obviously, James Tiberius Kirk. I'm like, not really.
Mm.
Just, I've discovered the name Tiberius at some point and thought, that sounds like a fun name. Put an E
I
in there,
always
make it
sort of
hackerish.
figured, yeah, I always sort of figured it was like based off of some Roman or Greek like ruler or something.
No, I adopted that. I mean, look at my background, right? I adopted the whole Roman thing just because it kind of made sense. I mean, Emperor Tiberius, the
Oh,
most well-known Tiberius, I guess.
yeah,
But
because
yeah,
you always have that statue, that bust. I
yeah.
figured it was like you had this whole thing about like a Roman emperor or something.
No, that it was a Wikipedia image that was free to use. I could modify it without having to pay for it. So I took that, put glasses on it, and yeah, there you go.
That's
It was
awesome.
the ultimate
You know,
cheap way of getting an avatar.
I made mine from scratch, so I'm actually a little
Nice.
disappointed in you.
I have no artistic talent. AI is all I do for art generation these days. Okay. Can you walk us through your decision to transition from nursing to cybersecurity? What was the motivation to leave nursing and what sparked your interest in cybersecurity?
Yeah, so I touched on it a little bit, but I'll go a little more into the story. So, back before I even knew computers were cool at all, like I knew nothing about computers. I used them, but for some reason I never like wondered how they worked. I was working in California as an ER nurse and I was working night shift. This was all during COVID. My entire nursing career was during COVID, pretty much from the beginning to like when it started waning off. So, on my nights off, I was living by myself in this state I didn't know anybody in. So, my nights off, I would just, keep a night schedule. I wouldn't switch back to a day schedule because it was just easier that way. And it's not like I had friends or family to hang out with. So, I would keep a night schedule and I just for some reason was like feeling bored one night. And, my boyfriend knows some things about computers. He taught me some stuff. He helped me build my desktop. And I think also with his like influence, just something happened where one night I was just like, yo, I'm kind of interested in computers. And I had been listening to Darknet Diaries when I was driving to and from work. So that paired with like just being bored and lonely on my nights off, I started like looking into it. I was starting to learn, I was starting to like spin up VMs and stuff by watching Network Chuck and coding like tiny bits in Python, just like little scripts and stuff, and working my day job or my night job in the ER. And then around that same time, I got attacked by a patient pretty brutally. It was out of nowhere, and I came out of it with a pretty serious concussion, which makes me a little bit nervous to talk about. So sorry if I get like awkward, but with a pretty serious concussion that I think is more along the lines of a TBI. So I got this TBI concussion and I had all these horrible symptoms. Like I couldn't sit down for more than like 30 minutes without getting confused and like a huge headache, photophobic, noise phobic, I guess you could say. So just sitting down and doing any sort of task, I would just gas out really quick. And I became stupid. Like I actually mean that. So after it happened, my work tried to have me come in for a shift on light duty. And I remember I was working the desk basically kind of like a secretarial role. And I had like a patient record that I had to go reprint or something. And I walked up to some other type of secretary personnel and tried to explain my situation to her. And she, answered my question, and I had to have her repeat what she said to me like 3 or 4 times before I could even tell what the hell she was saying. That's how dumb I was. So I went from like this really high performing like ER nurse that was probably the peak of my intellect to just straight up dumb. So that whole thing was going on. And then a month later, we ended up having to move across the country. So when we moved to this state that has like horrible nursing laws and the pay is worse, like a much worse situation as a nurse than where I was before. So I had been learning a little bit of coding, doing CS50 even though I could only sit and do things for like 30-ish minutes at a time before, like I said, gassing out. I was learning these things. And when we moved, the nursing was so bad there. And I had just had this horrible traumatic experience that it just didn't make sense for me to be a nurse anymore. Not only was I traumatized, but the new place had horrible nursing laws and like ratios with patients and all that. So I started like seriously considering going into tech and coding specifically. And that's when I sort of decided to make the switch. However, I was really excited about cybersecurity, but at the time I didn't understand that you could code and do cybersecurity. So I made the choice between the two, and I decided because I liked coding so much that I would go into web dev. So around like August of that year is when I started learning web development and Twitch streaming. So that's basically, the long answer to that.
So how did you transition into cybersecurity from that?
Yes. So really back
Gotcha.
then, before I knew anything about computers, it was like either cybersecurity or coding. But it wasn't until later when I started like learning more about tech that I realized that you could do coding and cybersecurity at the same time. So that was probably about 6 months into learning and like streaming on Twitch and whatnot. I just finally had enough understanding of the field that I realized that I could do both. And even if I went into cybersecurity and didn't have a coding job, I could just code at home,
Right.
off hours. Like it wasn't like anyone was going to stop me. So it just like clicked one day.
That's awesome. You're self-taught. Can you elaborate on the resources you used to learn coding and hacking over the past year and a half?
Yeah. So back before I decided to switch when I was still living in California, I started with CS50 and got about halfway through that, but was also concussed. So didn't really retain a lot of it. When we moved, I decided to go with the Odin project, which is a free online source for learning web development, full stack. So they'll teach you back end and front end JavaScript, but also Ruby on Rails if you decide. And I worked through about half of that on the JavaScript side. About halfway through, I decided to do my own project for the first time, like from scratch. And that was making a Twitch bot. So having my own project and starting that and like seeing it through was kind of the transition. It was about the same time as when I started transitioning into thinking about cybersecurity. So I think it was like I learned enough foundational stuff about tech as a field that I started exploring outside of just JavaScript and web development. And a little bit after starting the Twitch bot, I started looking into cybersecurity more because I decided, oh, I can actually do this as a job and code. And looking at all of the certs that you needed, I didn't like any of the like big three, the Net Plus, A Plus, Sec Plus stuff. Because when I looked at the curriculum, it seemed super dry and like I wasn't actually going to be able to learn it and retain it. And that's when I came across the PMPT, which was actually Gar. Gar actually suggested the PMPT to me. And if, whoever's listening and doesn't know Gar, Gar is a former nurse who's a pen tester now who also streams that I happen to know. So he pointed me towards the PMPT, and I liked that it was practical, and I liked that it was competitive with OSCP. And that's really when I committed into going to cybersecurity.
Yeah, it's funny that you mentioned Gar because it's kind of cool how small this community is because I used to actually work with Gar.
Yeah, that's
Like
crazy.
we were co-workers back in I think 2018, 2019 or something. So yeah, that was really fun to learn that he streamed and that he knows a lot of other streamers and people as well. So that's kind of cool. Okay, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced while learning cybersecurity on your own?
That's a hard one. I would say having no foundation in computers and technology at all was difficult, especially when I did decide to start looking into cybersecurity and doing the PMPT. I had to pick up a lot of foundational stuff like networking. So that has been really hard, but I will say that streaming to like a group of people can be really helpful because they tend to know things. They tend to be in tech or in cybersecurity themselves. So I've used streaming as a way to help me learn things. I would say if I hadn't been streaming when I started learning how to code and working on the PMPT and like working on Hack the Box, if I wasn't streaming, first of all, my coding would be so bad. Like my coding practice would be so insanely bad. And second, like it would have taken me so much longer to do starting point and Hack the Box because I swear those first couple of boxes, I had no clue what was happening. Like it was very disoriented. It took probably about halfway through starting point on Hack the Box for me to even have a clue about what was happening. So definitely like the transition from not knowing computers at all to having to know all these things. And in tech, there's just so much to know about all these like protocols and services, and you just can't possibly know all the things. I would say that alone has been the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and so you mentioned streaming helped. Is that mostly because you had chat there to basically point you in the right direction?
Yeah, so especially when I was learning to code, I was super lucky that I had, like, when I started streaming, I didn't have any idea what I was doing as a streamer. My UI was shitty. I didn't have sound alerts. I just hopped on one day and was like, I'm going to code. So for some reason, I was super lucky that the first couple of viewers that came in were really knowledgeable, especially the OGs that just were with me from the beginning. They all seemed to know everything and they were really good about teaching me what I needed to know for coding. And I'll look back at my old YouTube videos where I document my first projects in JavaScript before I even started streaming. And it's just so obvious how much of an influence they had on my coding. My practices are way better. I had no idea. I was just, doing what they were telling me, but they were teaching me like really good practices. And yeah, for some reason, I've been lucky enough that when people come in, for the most part, they're helpful. A lot of the time, especially as I got more viewers, I kind of have had to figure out when somebody doesn't really know what they're talking about. And that's kind of hard, especially when you're brand new, because you'll have people telling you essentially bullshit. And it's hard to tell that they're telling you bullshit because you don't know. So I've learned to kind of suss those people out. But for the most part, everyone has been super helpful, which is kind of strange because they're just helping somebody randomly for free online. I've been really lucky.
Yeah, but I guess also you're streaming, so you're providing that. I hesitate to call it entertainment, but I feel like all streaming, even educational streaming, is entertainment in some way. So I think that also helps. They wouldn't be there if they didn't want to watch somebody coding.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. But then also, like, my cousin has started streaming. Lil Bitty Diver, if anyone wants to check her out. She's brand new to coding. She's been streaming code, and sometimes I'll watch her stream and try to help her from chat. And it's so hard. Like, you just watch the person mess up for like 5 minutes and they're not reading chat because they're focused and you're
Yep.
really trying to tell them, or you're trying to tell them something and you put a typo and it totally messes up what you were trying to say and they get like, it's hard. So
Yep.
yeah, there is a transaction between the entertainment value and them wanting to be there, but also like I feel grateful to everyone that stuck around and put up with me, especially in the beginning.
Okay. Is there any advice you'd give to someone thinking about getting into this field, especially if they're considering a career change?
Ooh, especially if a career change. Okay, let's see. I think for anyone getting into the field, the biggest thing that's worked for me is putting myself out there. I've done a lot of cold applications, just applying online to places, and haven't heard back from most of them, like ever. And when I do hear back from them every once in a while, it's a no, right? So, streaming, making YouTube videos, having a blog, all of that has really helped to like get my head stuck up above everybody else's. Having like a community platform, whether it's on Twitter or blogging or Twitch or YouTube, has helped me network a ton. And that's where all of my serious opportunities have come from. So, this recent one, the internship that I'm starting, literally came from somebody who had been in the chat watching me do Hack the Box on Twitch. And at their company, the internship was opening up soon. So, they hit me up, messaged me, and said, "Hey, if you're interested, my company has an internship and the application is opening up. So, you should totally apply." I would not have been able to find that on my own. And even if I had and applied, it's likely that my application would have been lost because there's a ton applying. But now I have somebody who knows me, who's literally inviting me in, and that's just made a huge difference. So that's what I would say for anyone trying to get into tech or cybersecurity. But for career changers specifically, I would say just take your past experience and try to fix your resume and the way you talk about yourself in interviews so that the skills and stuff that you learned in your other trade are applied to what you want to do in cybersecurity, because that's super useful. So you got to take your past experience and really mold it and shape it to fit what you want to do, because all of those little skills that you learned can definitely help you out if you know how to sell yourself and sell the idea of you as it pertains to what you'll be as somebody in tech or cybersecurity.
Yeah, I think that's a great answer, especially the just putting yourself out there, networking. Networking is huge. And that's why I really encourage people to go to conventions, because the
Yeah,
people you
God.
meet at conventions and the contacts that you make, it's really good. Conventions are largely a social gathering
Yeah.
rather than any kind of information sharing. Like, yeah, there are talks, but I think you honestly maybe learn more at the bar afterwards and meet more people just, drinking by the poolside, as in HackSpaceCon, than you do wandering around the actual convention, which is really
Yeah,
cool.
I didn't even think to say that, but definitely, definitely. Like, it was crazy how many people you meet. And it just gives you the chance to put yourself in front of people who are gonna matter for when you want to get in, Or just, I remember when we were at HackSpaceCon, we met that guy who had a war driving box that he made. Like a young dude. He was maybe a college kid. And he was like telling me about his YouTube and stuff. I'll have to remember his YouTube channel so you can
Yeah,
link it
definitely.
later. But yeah, like that was cool.
So I only started following you on Twitch about a year ago, and yes, I did go check. So I don't know how you actually started on the platform. What first got you into streaming, and what made you decide to stream your new career journey?
Yeah. So around the time I started doing the Odin project, I knew that I was going to need to, if I wanted to really make a career switch, I knew that I was going to need to put myself out there. So I started making YouTube videos, and the Odin project, like I said, you just do little projects. So I would do a couple of projects and then make a YouTube video. Just it was just me talking about, hey, look, I made this little pixel art thing. Like they're very junior and awkward and whatever. But my point in making them was not to make a very professional video. It was just to get myself out there, literally just talking about coding. So after a couple of YouTube videos, I realized, oh, I could also stream. Like I had never really used Twitch, never been on the platform. But one day I was just like, if I get on Twitch and I can stream while I'm coding, So I just sort of tried it one day. And yeah, like I said, just had no UI, had no plan for how I was going to interact with chat, had no plan for even what I was going to stream. I was just like, I'm here coding all day. I might as well just stream what I'm coding. So I just turned it on and started coding. And that was really why, just because I knew I wanted to get out there. I probably should have planned it maybe a little better, but it's worked out. So you just got to get out there.
Awesome. So you've been streaming your development of a tool called NetPuppy recently. Can you
Yeah.
explain what it does, why you decided to make it, and are there any plans for your next big coding project?
Oh, okay. So NetPuppy is the greatest thing ever. Personally, like it's my best project I've ever made so far. It's very junior, it's not like good, I'm sure, but I'm super proud of it. And it's probably the best code that I've personally written. But NetPuppy started off as just a copy of Netcat. I wanted to recreate Netcat, but using Golang. Actually, that's a lie. I wanted to recreate Netcat using Python. So I started making NetPuppy and decided I didn't like Python because I learned that Python and threading is toxic. So I switched to Golang. And after working through what I thought Netcat was doing and figuring out that Netcat actually was not doing those things, the project has sort of shifted into being okay, it's a command line tool that you put on one computer and have on the other computer. So let's say you're a hacker and you have a target. You have to get NetPuppy, the binary file, over on your target and start it let's say on your computer, you got to start NetPuppy in listen mode. And then you start Netcat on your target in connect back mode, is what I call it. And it'll connect back and you can send little messages back and forth. But if you start the connect back NetPuppy with the shell flag, it'll start a reverse shell for you. So then you have a shell on the target computer. So it's not the same as Netcat anymore because Netcat just does it'll start files, it'll whatever. It's a little different.
Yeah.
Now what I'm focusing on with NetPuppy is just having a very stable shell, because if anyone listening has hacked a box, you got to get in there with your reverse shell and you got to stabilize it, like import Python, PTY, spawn, whatever.
Mhm.
I was like, no, I don't want to do that. I want the shell to be super solid. I want it to have all the things. So it's basically become Telnet right now at this point.
That's good. I think it's really cool that after you found out, oh, actually, it's literally it's just used to send, the TCP packets. You
Yeah.
decide, you know what? Screw it. Why shouldn't it be able to actually spawn a proper pseudo terminal with, a shell? That would be awesome. So I think that's really cool. I'm really looking forward to using it. I'm going to try and use it on my stream when I do Hack the Box and try hack me. I think it's going to be great.
Yeah. I mean, right now you could probably even try to use it. It will only work on Linux for now.
Mhm.
I haven't done the whole with Golang because it's compiled. You can have different files do the same thing, but for different operating systems. And I haven't
Mhm.
gone that far. She just works on Linux right now.
Fair enough. Okay, so obviously the biggest news you've been able to share recently was being hired as a penetration testing intern. So firstly, congratulations. But what are you most looking forward to in the role?
Oh, man. Okay. I can't wait to start. Also, thank you. The company that I got hired into, they seem super cool. The fact that they have an internship and it's not just for college graduates alone was already super cool to me. But through the entire interview process, the people I talked to and interviewed with were super chill, super into the idea of teaching juniors, which I feel like is not well valued in tech or cybersecurity. So I'm excited about that because I'm really confident that it's going to be a good time and that I'm going to learn a lot and the people I'm going to work with are going to be awesome. So I'm excited to learn from, real professionals and get hands-on with it. Hack the Box and stuff is great. It's about as hands-on as you can get unless you want to go into bug bounty. But I'm really excited to get hands-on with the stuff That's going to be the best part, because that's when the learning is really going to start. It's not going to be a box that was made vulnerable for you with vulnerabilities that maybe aren't even that common anymore. From what I can tell from professionals like you and like Gar, the pen testing that you do outside of CTFs and Hack the Box is very different. So I'm excited to see how different it is and how it really happens. That's what I'm most excited for.
Yeah, I was speaking about this recently on Twitter, actually. It's so important. One of the biggest things you'll need to learn if you transition from just doing Hack the Box into pen testing is knowing when to stop looking for something. Because, with Hack the Box, it's like, oh, I know it's vulnerable. It's Hack the Box. With a regular pen test, it's more, I don't know it's vulnerable. It could be. How long do I want to spend if I think there's a particular vulnerability that I'm trying to exploit? How long do I spend like hunting that down, enumerating stuff, tweaking my payloads to see if I can actually get anything out? Yeah, so I agree. It is very different. If you're really skilled at Hack the Box, it doesn't necessarily mean you won't be a good pen tester. In fact, you probably will be, but it is a different mindset for sure.
Yeah. And I would say personally with Hack the Box, my biggest thing that I've struggled with, and I even reached out to you to ask, and Gar actually, about questions around this, but it's hard to, as a noob, for me personally, it was hard to decide if I wanted to just use a tool that was obvious or really try to understand what the heck was going on, because it's hard to even talk about because the idea is weird. But I had to really learn through doing Hack the Box that sometimes just run the tool. Just run it. Because if you spend a ton of time really digging into what it's doing, you can, but it ends up wasting some time. And it was hard for me to find a balance between fully understanding everything that Nmap could do and then just running Nmap-A and not worrying about it. I don't know where that fits in, but that part was hard for me. And I'm kind of excited to see how things are actually done. That's like another reason why.
Yeah, for sure. There'll definitely be some kind of methodology. Hopefully, especially with an internship, I'd assume they'll put you with a decent senior or a couple of senior people, and we will learn a lot and your eyes will be open. Open, I should say.
That's what I'm hoping for.
Can you describe what the interview process was like, and are there any lessons you learned from the experience?
So I have 2 major interviews that I went through, and I will say this one for the internship was actually super easy. Like when I first applied, they sent a list of all the questions that they were going to ask. And they were like, hey, we just want you to be prepared for these questions. It was so easy that I was kind of freaked out by it at first. I was like, is this a trap? Is there something going on that I don't understand? So I actually asked another mentor of mine, like, hey, should I be sus of this? I don't get it. Why are they just giving me all the questions? And he made a good point. He said, basically, they just want to make sure that you're able to follow directions and plan and prepare for something. Mm-hmm. So it's not a trap. Just do what it says, right? The interview that I had before that one was a lot different. It was a little more difficult. It was a technical interview. And I've made a YouTube video about what I learned from it. But to sum that up, basically, you have to think about yourself as an applicant as it relates to the company, right? So they're gambling on you, especially if it's like a cold apply. They don't know you at all. So they're really going to be sussing you out. So whatever is within your own control, as far as the interview process and the application process, you want to make those parts as good as you possibly can because they're within your control. Other things that are going to be outside of your control when you're interviewing, those are going to detriment you or not detriment you. You can't really control them, right? So you want to just take everything within your control and just make it as good as possible. So a good example of what I mean is for that first interview, part of the reason I got invited is that I had been working on a project with one of the people in the company. A Twitch viewer invited me to code on this app for a nonprofit that he also works for. And in doing that code and coding that application, he was sort of testing me to see if I'd be a good applicant. I didn't know that at the time, but after coding the project, he was like, hey, you want to apply to this position? So that was within my control. Coding the app, I tried to do the best that I possibly could on that app. I planned it out really in depth, which I almost never do when I code. I pitched.
Me too.
Yeah. I pitched my plan to him. I spent a ton of time working on it and trying to make it as good as possible because I knew that maybe, like, I didn't know he was going to invite me to a job, but I was going to put this work on a resume, right? I got to make this the best that I possibly can because that's within my control right now. And other factors that go into when people decide whether they're going to invite you for an interview or not are outside of your control. Like they might look at my past history, my experience, and be like, oh, this person doesn't have any tech experience. I can't change that. And it's probably going to detriment me. So that's my biggest thing that I tell people about what I learned from those interviews is take the things that you have control over and make them the best that you can, because you're not going to be able to do anything when the things that you don't have control of work against you, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great answer. Did we just hear Trash Puppy in the background as well? Or
Oh, could you hear that? That was actually Crack Puppy.
was that a Crack Puppy? All right, fair
Yeah,
enough.
yeah. They're barking at somebody walking by.
As I currently understand it, you don't have any cybersecurity certs. However, you are working on the PNPT from TCM. So do you have any advice for people in a similar situation and how they can demonstrate their knowledge?
Okay, specifically on like demonstrating your knowledge, I would say, and I'm a junior, like I don't know things, okay? So take this with a grain of salt. But when I looked at whether I wanted to get Sec Plus, Net Plus, A Plus, I decided against it because it was going to be a lot of money for curriculum that was dry and probably useful, but something I was just going to forget after trying to cram it. You know what I mean? So instead of choosing those certifications, I went with the PNPT because it was practical. It had a practical test out. And even though it's more of an advanced certification, and I probably would have benefited from doing the lower level beginner certifications like those three beforehand, I knew that I could teach myself that type of foundational stuff in doing the PNPT. So, as far as demonstrating what you know, I think certs like PNPT are a little bit better because it's more hands on. You learn actual hacking techniques because you have to do a practical test out where you pen test a network. So, doing a cert like that, you get more hands on experience and you can show more when it comes time for you to show what you can do. But also, along the way, to demonstrate your knowledge, it's the same thing again. Like, you need to put yourself out there, make a blog. Like one of the things that I did was during the PMPT, I would take a bunch of notes. And actually, I have a huge notes repo that includes everything that I've been learning about tech, but a subsection of it is PMPT stuff. I put that up on GitHub, and during stream and stuff, I invite people to use it if they want, you know. So that's another way that you could demonstrate what you know. Just anything you can do to publicize what you're doing instead of just working in a little void by yourself. People are not going to know your skill if you're just waiting until the interview to demonstrate it. You could be demonstrating it while you're learning along the way.
That's great. Yeah, that's a great answer. Are there any specific areas of penetration testing that particularly interest you?
Not particularly. I will say I would love to learn more about hacking Active Directory simply because I hate Active Directory so much. So, out of spite, I would love to be really good at hacking it. But yeah, other than that, I don't really have a particular specific interest in any one part of pen testing. And that's been kind of difficult, honestly, in all of tech, like learning anything. It feels like a bunch of doors open up and you have to go explore all of them. And you explore this one topic and all these new topics branch off, right? So there are a lot of little sub fields of cybersecurity that I'm like interested in. But the more I learn, the more open up, and I haven't really nailed down exactly what I want to do, but it all interests me. Like I get excited about pretty much everything on the spectrum. Like we've done binary exploitation on stream. I got really excited about GDB, but as well as network pen testing and really anything I'll get excited about. So I don't know. There might be a time where I specialize and find something I'm really, really into, but right now it could be anything.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's great at the start of your cybersecurity career, especially as a pen tester, is just to literally just dip your toes into absolutely everything. So I think that's really good that you get excited about absolutely everything is really good for a junior. I think naturally over time, you'll find certain types of tests to be more fun. For me, obviously, that's web apps. For other people, that is Active Directory. On that vein, I'm not sure if the CRTP, the Certified Red Team Professional, is still active. But I did take that, and that taught me more about Active Directory, I think, than any other course I'd ever taken. So
Really?
I definitely recommend it. It's not that expensive either. Last time I think it was like $300 or something. The exam was difficult, but the course amazing, and the videos were really really fun and really well taught.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that then because I'd love to just pwn Windows all the time.
So we have a question from Arubius, who is a frequent viewer in both of our streams. What skills from your previous ER nursing career have you realized are applicable in your new tech career pursuits?
Yeah, it's actually been surprising. Every once in a while, I'll realize, oh, yeah, I can do this. I was a nurse. And it's just surprising to see how many skills transfer. But I would say the biggest ones that a lot of people in tech would agree with right away is incident response. I even had a couple of applications where they were requiring the ICS, which is an incident response certification for FEMA, I think it is. I got that at nursing school. So, incident response is a big one. For cybersecurity and ER specifically, you could always say talking to people. Like, I've talked to people from all over the place in every type of situation, stressed out or whatever. I know how to talk to people. That's a big one too in tech. A lot of companies seem to be looking for those interpersonal skills. So that's been really helpful. Another one would be being calm under pressure. Like on stream, I'll get a little frustrated about things. But if you were to ever have me in an emergency situation where someone is dying, I'm super calm. Especially when I started as a new nurse. Sometimes people didn't know that I was a new nurse because I was so calm. And it kind of was a detriment because I'd have to go and ask, hey, how do I do this thing? And they're like, what? What do you mean? Aren't you like seasoned? So that I think is going to be helpful. If I ever
Absolutely.
get into like IR, like really intense situations, I would just say there's probably, well, okay, people keep trying to tell me that it's going to be stressful, but I don't think there's ever going to be a situation that I come across in tech or cybersecurity that is as stressful as trying to keep somebody alive. So I think I'm good on that front.
That's true. I do wonder
Yeah.
actually if you're people who have to handle a lot of pressure in cybersecurity and pen testing specifically. I would say social engineering. Do you ever do social engineering? Because everyone can talk about how great they would be at a social engineering engagement until they actually have to get in there and you
Yeah.
actually have to lie to people.
Yeah.
And, that can be very, very stressful. So I honestly wonder if that's something you're into, whether that would.
So if I were to be the only social engineering that I am good at from being a healthcare professional is I was a nurse assistant for a really long time, like 3 or 4 years before nursing school. And specifically, I worked in nursing homes in the secured unit. And the secured unit is like where they put the really crazy, violent dementia patients. So I got pretty good at lying to demented patients because they would have crazy delusions, right? They're like, oh, I gotta go get the train. And they're trying to leave or break out of the
Yeah,
building. So I got pretty good at that type of fibbing, like, oh no, it's Sunday. We'll get the train tomorrow. The trains aren't running.
gotcha. Yeah,
So
yeah.
I'm pretty good at it's manipulating, but I don't want to say manipulating. I'm good at manipulating people who are out of their minds. Like I can talk them
Hmm.
out of delusions and even if they're hallucinating and stuff, like I'm good at that. But I'm
Yeah.
not sure that's going to be applicable to people who are totally sane and like know what's happening.
Oh no, you might be surprised to be honest, but like, yeah, it is manipulation. Manipulation has a bad, I don't know, it's considered a bad term, and it generally is. But yeah, I mean, hacking is for the most part in society thought of as a bad thing, even though as hackers we always argue, hacking itself is pretty neutral. You can use it for good and you can use it for bad. So I think
Yeah.
for social engineering, yeah, manipulation is just a part of the job, and it's
Yeah,
not
and
it's not
that's how it was
necessarily
for
bad.
me too. Yeah, that's how it was for me. Cause like if Grammy thinks that the train is coming today and she's going to break out of the building because she's so worried about that, I don't
Mm.
think it's bad to tell to
No,
lie to her and tell her there's no there's no train. We'll catch it tomorrow. You know what I mean?
it's basically a white lie, kind of.
It's a white lie and it's keeping her and other patients safe. And that
Yeah.
was the whole point of all of my lying and manipulation as a nurse assistant. It was just to keep them from doing crazy things like attacking other people or breaking out or standing up when they can't walk, like that type of thing.
Yeah,
It's
absolutely.
necessary.
Yeah. I understand this is still extremely early days for you, but do you have any long-term career goals in cybersecurity? Do you think you'll stick with the red team side, or could you be tempted to go blue?
Hmm. You know, I regret that I haven't seen a lot of blue team yet. I actually want to. And like what I was talking about earlier with Hack the Box and not knowing, deep diving tools and stuff to find out what they really do. Part of that was that I didn't want blue team to know. Like I would always worry while doing Hack the Box, hey, is Nmap going to make a ton of noise? Like I want to be sneaky. So I'm actually really interested in blue team and I haven't been able to see blue team at all. So yeah, I could be really interested in it. I don't know. I don't know. Maybe that'll be my career path. But right now, knowing that it'll probably change because tech is massive and every time I learn something new, my like direction shifts slightly. Knowing that right now, I would say that my goal is to be an offensive security professional who also gets to write tooling. I'm really into writing the tools. I think HD Moore is one of my idols right now
Mhm.
and has been since I heard his episode on Darknet Diaries. That's what I want to emulate.
Nice.
Writing security tools like that would be the dream.
Yeah, I can definitely see that as well. I think writing security tools is great, especially. I think it helps obviously to come from a penetration testing background as well, because obviously you need to understand the people who are going to be using the tool,
Yeah.
and that's how a lot of tools start. That I think is probably how most security tools start. Is somebody was doing a pen test and thought, you know what, why isn't there a tool for this? And then I'm gonna write that tool, and then suddenly 3 or 4 years later, it's the tool to use
Yeah,
for that.
exactly. Kind of like you, Tibbs. Kind of like Auto
Yes.
Recon.
Auto Recon.
Congrats, by the
Only,
way.
yeah, so Auto Recon has recently made it into Cali, which is very
Yep,
cool.
yep. Yeah, it's freaking awesome.
Cybersecurity is a field that requires almost constant learning and upskilling. What resources do you use to stay on top of the latest developments, and how do you remain motivated?
The latest developments.
Yeah,
Twitter.
Twitter, exactly. That's all I
So
needed. I
something
agree.
that I talk about all the time is like, especially switching into tech, it's like I'm drinking from a fire hose constantly. And that's part of the reason I take such detailed notes is because I know I'm going to forget shit. So if I take really detailed notes, I can always go back to them, grep through my notes and find them. So no, I am not on top of the current up and coming trends and crap that's dropping today. I barely got space in my head for what I'm trying to learn right now.
That's fair enough. I think everything eventually makes it to Twitter anyway.
Yeah, so I'll see things like, ooh, XZ. XZ, I'm on top of that. But like, no, that's the extent of my like cutting edge know-how.
Fair enough. That's a good answer. If you were given an unlimited training budget, what course or cert would you go for first?
I mean, I guess you gotta do OSCP. But I say that and I'm not really sold on it, but I think that's my answer. I know that's not a very good answer, but
It's a perfectly fine answer.
OSCP is like historically, not even historically, it is super expensive. And that's another reason I chose PMPT is because they're very competitive and PMPT is way more affordable.
Mm.
So, yeah, if I had unlimited money, I guess I would go for OSCP. I know that they have a similar test out. It's practical. They try to teach you the whole never give up thing or work harder, whatever it is.
Try harder, yeah.
Yeah, so I guess that's what I would go for. I don't really know of many others. So, yeah, that's my best answer.
That's fine. There's a ton. It's funny though that you mentioned. I think this shows how much the industry has changed. When I entered the industry, OSCP was considered the cheapest.
Wow, yeah.
For what it granted you in the industry, it was considered relatively cheap compared to SANS courses, for example. So,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
it is very interesting how, and I think it's because so many people have started creating courses and content and selling other certs for cheaper because they can, because ultimately money isn't the end goal of these, it's education. So I think that's really interesting to see how OCP is now pretty expensive. It's not the most expensive, but yeah, for pen testing certs specifically, it's definitely one of the more expensive ones. It is still worth getting, I think. I feel like we're going to say that forever, but at some point I think it won't be the cert that everyone has to get to be a pen tester. But right now, yeah, it probably still is. PMPT though is definitely a great cert as well.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of people are making content, you know, to get in, but also because all of the stuff that you need to learn is out there for free. It's
Mhm.
just a matter of putting it together in a way that's useful for someone who's learning and then yeah, like valued by the field itself. That's something great about tech that is not true for a lot of other career fields. You can teach yourself pretty much everything you need for free.
Yes.
And if you work really hard at it and you don't need a lot of structure, you could do it even without free courses. Like it's all out there for you. It's just a matter of how it's structured and like what type of meaning you take out of it, I guess.
Yeah, I agree. What I've heard from a lot of my students of my previous courses is, even though all the information, like there's no information in my previous courses that isn't out there somewhere on the internet. That's not the point. The point of the previous course was to put it all into one platform and video and to teach it by a demo.
Yeah.
I think people appreciate that. There's some people who would rather pay a small fee to access material that someone has bundled together than spend hours Googling for different things.
Yeah. And when I said like if you really work hard at it, you wouldn't need any courses at all. That's because courses and the way that people structure information in courses is super valuable. I've learned recently with NetPuppy, like some stuff on the internet's not true. Like when I tried to learn concurrency by myself, there was a lot of misinformation, even though I was using multiple references and cross checking them. I still got that wrong.
It's because nobody understands concurrency.
Yeah, there is a lot of value in having the content prepared by somebody who knows what they're talking about and is not lying to you and is putting in a way that makes sense and also just like finding all that, putting it together. If I tried to teach myself JavaScript right, I would have missed so many of the foundational topics that I had no idea even existed that the Odin project taught me because it was put together by people who know how to code. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So, yeah, all the information is out there, but be warned, some of it's wrong, and a lot of it is hard to find on your own.
absolutely. And speaking of concurrency, I'll definitely link to your concurrency video because, like I said, when you asked me to review it, and I was honest with my feedback, you did in 15 minutes an absolutely outstanding job of explaining concurrency.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Women are still unfortunately underrepresented in cybersecurity. Do you have any thoughts on how we as an industry can increase diversity, and have you experienced any gender related challenges in your journey?
This one's hard. So, I'm coming from an industry that is largely female. Like, I
Mhm.
pretty much only worked with females. And yeah, there were a couple males working as nurses, but for the most part, mostly women, right? So, one of the first things I noticed when I started getting involved on like tech and cybersecurity Twitter is how much misogyny there is. Just like
Mm.
blatantly, people say stupid shit like, oh, you're a woman. There's no way you know what you're talking about. You can't code, you shouldn't be doing cybersecurity. You shouldn't be a programmer. Like, I was shocked for the
Mm.
first couple months. And I wish I had a better answer for like what the field should do to increase diversity or, anything along those lines, but I don't really because I'm so new to this. And I myself am trying to learn how to navigate it as a professional slash content creator. It seems like a weird time. It seems like I've come into like this weird transitioning time where like I would say Twitter's the worst place for it, but you do see a lot of like female role models on Twitter, like She Networks, Track It Pacer. I'm sure there's a bunch of others that aren't coming to mind right now, but
Yeah,
oh, Metis 4, of course. Like I just love the way that they're dealing with misogyny in the space is just to be blatantly like, fuck off. Are you dumb? You're literally dumb. Like, so I don't know how it was before, but it feels like this is a more recent way to respond. And I'm all on top of that. Like, I'm on board for just not shirking away from it, not pretending that it's not there, literally just pointing it out and being like, you're a complete idiot, and here's why you're wrong. And I'm going to continue to do whatever I want despite you. Like, I'm going to post pictures that are cute, and I'm also going to post code and whatever technical projects that I'm working on just to spite you specifically, you weird little simpy weirdo who just can't deal. I don't know. Like, that seems to be the energy, and I'm about that
yeah.
because I don't see why it should be any other way. And if dudes on like in the space, on Twitter, whatever, if they want to be blatantly misogynistic, then I think we should just blatantly
Call them out for it.
punish them for it and call them out. So a lot of my memes are a little unhinged, like the tits in code. That was a pretty good one.
That was great.
And that's like, it's weird to talk about. I don't even know how to put it into words, but it's kind of fun to fuck with them in that way. Because you're like, I'm going to be here despite whatever you think. I'm just going to like, I don't know, unapologetically be a woman in tech, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know. Is that a newer trend, you think? I'm just coming into it, so I'm not sure.
I wouldn't say it's particularly new. I'm not entirely sure if it's gotten worse. Obviously the issue for me is that I'm a man and I don't experience that. So the only reason I'm aware of it is because I follow a lot of women in cybersecurity and tech on Twitter, and I see it happening to them. And I have a lot of friends who are women who it happens to. So I feel like it's probably just more awareness of it now. And obviously there are now loads of organizations that are encouraging women to get into tech and cybersecurity. So there are more women than ever in cybersecurity. So it's good in that sense that we are getting more women. I think it's triggered the misogynists. And yeah, I agree, to be honest. Yeah, the only way to combat it is to call it out. And that's especially true if you're a man, I think. I hate the term white knighting and everything. It's not, it doesn't need to be a term for anything. Defending a friend, defending somebody you follow who you respect is a perfectly reasonable thing to do. It's a perfectly normal thing to do. So I think, if you're a man, you see somebody acting that way, just put yourself in the target's shoes. Is that something that you want people to say to you? No.
Yeah, and I would say they're probably not even, a lot of the like really bad ones aren't even capable of that. Like there's an obvious difference between men in the space who are supportive and clearly not misogynistic because they just don't do crap like that. Whereas the dudes who do, it's like they got a weird way of thinking that just doesn't occur to other people. Mm-hmm. And so they say these things that are blatantly dumb, and then they just get, canceled for it. Like regular men on Twitter who are supportive don't get weird about everything.
Right. Yeah.
Like just don't be weird.
This is a question from Ed Barnard on Twitter. He asks if you have any advice or survival skills for other women entering the cybersecurity field, especially when it comes to dealing with misogynistic stereotypes.
Okay, survival skills, I would say first off, have a crew. Because when I first started interacting on Twitter and realizing, wow, this place is kind of toxic, I talked to one of the staff members at TCM because since I'm in the PMPT and the PCRP cohort, I'm on the Discord, I can reach out to them. And I remember telling her like, hey, I'm not used to this. What do I do? And she was like, if anyone is ever misogynistic towards you, just hit us up. Like hit me up. We'll literally roll in and we'll steamroll that person. So that gave me a lot of confidence. Like, oh, it's not just something I'm going to have to deal with by myself, like just have a survival technique or tip that I have to do by myself. There's a family, you know what I mean, who are willing to like help you out with that type of thing. If you don't have that and you're dealing with misogyny in the field, I would say my advice would be different if it was in person, but online in the space, like we were talking about, call it out and also just don't let it bother you. A lot of the people who say things just blatantly misogynistic, there's something else going on. That's at least what I tell myself. Don't take them seriously. They're dumb, first of all. You can't trust what they're saying. They're not somebody that you should respect. And if you don't respect them, why would you worry about what they're saying about you? I turn it into like a joke. Like, ha, you're dumb. That has always helped me. I don't know if that's applicable all the time, but just don't let it bother you. That's my biggest advice. Do whatever you're doing despite it.
I think that's great advice. Yeah, absolutely. And it can be difficult to ignore, obviously, but
yeah, super difficult.
I think focusing on the fact that you know that you should be there. There's no reason why you shouldn't be here. People are always going to try and get you down, and that sucks, and I hate that it happens. But yeah, I think it's really good advice. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, on to a fun question now.
Sweet.
So Joe Helly, aka the Mayor, asks, what's the worst programming language and why is it Golang?
So funny. So funny. The worst programming language is Python because it lies to you, to your face. No, I don't know. If I were to answer seriously, I won't say Python, but I will say that languages like Python, like JavaScript, ones that sort of abstract away stuff that you really need to know about coding, they're not bad. They're easy to learn, but you'll get to a point where you're like, what is happening? And why isn't it what I thought was happening? And I think that's kind of bad. Like, they shouldn't do that. That's why I like Golang so much, because it's nitty gritty enough that you have to deal with foundational, lower level coding concepts, but the syntax is still easy enough that a beginner could totally pick it up. So that's my answer.
Fair enough. I don't like it, but I'll accept your answer. Another question from Arubius, and to be honest, probably most of your viewers are going to ask this. Are you planning to keep a streaming schedule as you start at your new internship?
I've been thinking about it. So the internship is like 11 a.m. till 4. So if I did, it would either have to be really early or late. Or I could do a co-working thing where you like, you don't show what's on your screen, but you're doing co-working. You're not really like talking to chat. You're just working and they're working literally, and there's like a camera on you.
Yeah.
I've tried it before, but I don't really like it because it's very voyeuristic and it makes me feel awkward that people are watching me, but I'm not interacting with them. So no promises. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. Maybe the weekends. Maybe that.
Weekends are good.
Yeah.
A lot of people watch the weekends. Okay. Finally, is there anything else you'd like to share with viewers? And also, where can they find and follow you online?
You might think this is funny. I think I told you that, but I actually got invited to record video walkthroughs for a Python course on boot.dev. So that'll be coming out. I'll actually be recording that on stream.
You're going to be gritting your teeth the entire time.
Yep. Yeah.
This is a good language.
Yeah, guys, you ready? I love this.
That's awesome, though. That's cool.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty excited about it. NetPuppy's obviously in the works. That's all I got as far as, projects. We'll see after this internship. Maybe I'll have like some more cybersecurity chops and I can take on something even bigger.
Awesome. And where can we find you online?
I'm on Twitch and Twitter and YouTube. I'm even on like Mastodon, Threads. I never use them, but you can find me there.
I'll put all links on the screen and video description anyway, but yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Those are the big ones. They're all Trash Puppy, but without the A, unfortunately.
At least you managed to get something that always resembles your name. I have it like 0x at the start of my Twitter and my Twitch, and on YouTube I'm just Tiberius because I managed to get
that does trip me up sometimes. But since Hack SpaceCon, I have been considering a 4.
Yes, you gotta have the leet speak in your name.
Yeah, I could have done.
That's how we know you're a hacker.
I know. I wish I knew about leet speak before.
Awesome. Well, Trash Puppy, thank you for sharing your experience of this with us today, and good luck at your new internship.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be the first episode. It's awesome. And I guess I'll see you around, Tibbs.
Awesome. Thank you so much.